Hi, this is Joyce Polino Crane. I'm the news director at WestfordCAT, and I am here today with Bonnie Butkus, the executive director of the Merrimack Repertory Theater. Welcome, Bonnie.
Oh, I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Bonnie, you're new to the theater. You just came this past summer, right?
It's been almost a year.
Oh, it has.
I came last summer and stayed in Lowell for a little while, and then my family and I moved to Westford, and we're thrilled to be here.
Happy to have you in Westford. It's so exciting that the executive director of MRT is living here, and your children are going to Westford schools.
Yep. I have one at Nabnasset and one at Abbott.
So we love Westford people at Westford Community Access TV. One thing I wanted to ask you before we get rolling on, everything behind the scenes at MRT is, can you tell us a little bit about your background and where you came from?
Sure. I grew up in the Finger Lakes area of New York State, and I graduated from the University of Buffalo with 2 degrees, one in dance and one in journalism. Journalism was my backup plan, so hopefully sitting where you are someday. And then I lived in New York City for almost a decade and worked mostly in theaters there, worked a little bit on Broadway, worked in a couple museums, and then moved back to Rochester when we started a family. And I was at Jiva Theater Center, which is a larger theater, professional theater company in Rochester, New York. And that's where I met Sean Daniels, who is the artistic director of Merrimack Repertory Theater. I was in higher education for a little while. And when MRT decided to search for an executive director, Sean started calling and texting and emailing me, telling me that I should apply.
Oh, how wonderful. What a good friend.
Yeah, he's a great friend. And we always knew that someday we would run a theater together and that we would have a great partnership. So here we are.
And now you do. That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about what happens at, behind the scenes. How many productions do you do a year?
So we do 7 productions. We are unusual in that most of our productions are new works. Sometimes we deviate from that when we do our Christmas show. But most of our plays are new, and a lot of them are world premieres. So they're things that no one has heard of before. And we've found that our audience in this region is really committed and really willing to go with us on this adventure of new plays. And we feel really fortunate to have been here for 40 years. It is our 40th anniversary season, and I know we're going to talk about that.
Yes.
But the fact that we have an audience here in this region with a lot of people coming from Westford, and they're willing to get on board with new plays and do that adventure with us is pretty amazing.
So interesting. And what a resource to have it right, I don't know, maybe a 15-minute drive away from here.
It's exactly 17 minutes.
You must know. So let's talk about the 40-year history. How did MRT get started?
So there were some folks in the community, and they were at a summer stock theater, I think up in New Hampshire. And years ago, there were a lot of summer stock theaters around, and part of that was because the big movie houses and the big Broadway houses didn't have air conditioning. So we had these summer stock theaters spring up in these communities that were by the ocean or were in cooler locations like Maine or New Hampshire. And probably 43 years ago, a group of folks were there at a summer stock theater, and they came back to Lowell and they said, Lowell deserves its own professional theater company. And out of that was born the idea for Merrimack Repertory Theater. It was originally called Merrimack Regional Theater, and they came back. They had a conversation with Nancy Donahue, who's one of the biggest supporters and philanthropists in the region. She got on board. She continues to be our chair. She has been our board chair for 40 years. UMass Lowell threw in some resources, gave them a space to work in.
Is it the current space, or I was going to ask you that?
We moved. So it was in a hall at UMass Lowell, and then eventually we moved to Liberty Hall, which is a building owned by the city of Lowell. We share space with Lowell Memorial Auditorium, which is a much larger space. Both of those theaters are owned by the city, so we pay rent to the city, and we work closely with the folks who run Lowell Memorial Auditorium to coordinate parking and building maintenance and all of those things.
That's fascinating. So the theater got going, and 40 years later, you're now in your 40th anniversary year. What plays do you have lined up for the year? What's special? What are you going to do that's different or unique or special?
I think it's a really great season. Overall, there are 5 out of the 7 playwrights are women. Sean and I both have a real commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. You'll find a lot of theaters are not producing as many women or people of color, and we're really trying to change that. very diverse community that we serve here in this region.
That's for sure.
And we're really trying to reflect that in our work. The first comedy of the season, which is in previews right now and will open this Saturday, is Native Gardens. It's a great play by Karen Zacharias, one of my favorite playwrights. She just has a knack for writing comedies with a bite underneath it that really gets you thinking and keeps you laughing. So Native Gardens tells the story of an older couple in a DC neighborhood, an older white couple who have this beautiful garden, this beautiful home. A younger Latinx couple moves in next door.
Uh-oh.
They discover there's a little property dispute and things go wildly awry from there. But it's a lot of laughter while dealing with some issues about who belongs in this country, who was here first. It's a show that everyone's loving so far. We've had 2 preview audiences, and I do hope people will come see it. The rest of the season is equally as good. We're doing a brand new Jack Kerouac piece. So
saw that.
Yeah.
I think I got a press release on that. That's how I'm very interested in seeing it.
right,
Going
so
to
there's a UMass Lowell connection to this. There was a Jack Kerouac novella, Haunted Life, which had been sort of lost, was found again and published by these UMass Lowell professors. And when Sean Daniels started at MRT 3 years ago as our artistic director, he knew he wanted to do a Kerouac piece. You know, you have to. It's Lowell, it's Jack Kerouac, he's our favorite son.
Absolutely.
So he spent quite a time trying to find the right piece, trying to secure the rights. And finally, we ended up with The Haunted Life, and it's been really exciting to work on. We've been through several drafts and several readings. We're doing more readings as we develop it, and that'll be in the spring. We are also doing several new plays. We're doing a comedy called Slow Food, in which a couple is at their anniversary dinner. It's a brand new world premiere play. They're at an anniversary dinner, and they just can't get food delivered. And if anyone's ever been on a date that's gone horribly wrong, you know that at some point you're really frustrated with the waiter, you're frustrated with your spouse, and it's just a hilarious comedy for everyone who's ever been in a long-term relationship and had one of those meals just go horribly wrong.
Oh, yes, I think we all can relate. So when is that one going to start?
So that one is in January. So right around the time that, you're sick of being snowed in, this is a good time to come out.
And laugh.
And laugh a lot.
Uh-huh.
We're also doing a world premiere by Lauren Gunderson. She's the most produced playwright in America right now. And we're really fortunate to have an ongoing relationship with her. She wrote Silent Sky, which was a big hit about women scientists at Harvard who discovered some of the most important astronomy and physics. Had some of the most important astronomy and physics discoveries, but we're never given credit. We're never even allowed to use the telescope, the Harvard Observatory. So that was a really popular and really wonderful piece last year. And so Lauren keeps writing. This time she's turning her writing skills on herself and talking about her relationship with her grandfather, who was older and much more conservative, had dementia later in life. And it's this really beautiful story of her coming to terms with their differences and also finding the ways that they were more alike. And so I think that story of 2 generations coming from really different backgrounds and coming together is a really important story to be telling right now. And it's Lauren Gunderson. She's an amazing playwright, and we're so fortunate to be doing the world premiere of her work right here in Lowell.
Yeah, so do you know where she's based?
Lauren is based in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Her family's from the Midwest. She's sort of bounced back and forth to New York City and California. She'll be here for the premiere of The Heath and to work. I'm really excited about that piece.
Oh, she's welcome to come here to the studio and do an interview if she has time.
All right, we will certainly try to make that happen.
Yeah. That is a question I have is, if you have a play for the wannabe writers out there or the writers who've just never written a play, if you have an idea, how do you go about submitting? Do you take submissions?
Most of our submissions come through agents. So playwrights have agents just like actors and directors. So most of the time our submissions do come through agents, but sometimes we'll be connected to people who are working on things. So we have somebody, I can't say the name of it yet because it's very early, but we had a playwright come through and work on something else, and he was so inspired by Lowell that he started writing a play about it. So
how
stay
interesting.
tuned.
Yeah, now I want a scoop. I'm a journalist.
Lowell has so many great stories. So when people come to visit and they start walking around and talking to people and going on those great history tours, I think quite a few people have walked away and said, oh, I need to write something. But a lot of it happens through network. Sean Daniels, our artistic director, has worked all over the country. And I've worked at a few theaters too. So we do get a lot of things from our friends and colleagues and agents. We don't usually take open submissions, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't review something if somebody wanted to reach out to us.
Very nice. So besides the playwright that you just mentioned,
so Lauren Gunderson is writing this world premiere.
Are there any local up-and-coming playwrights who you can talk about or mention?
I don't have, Sean Daniels wrote the adaptation of The Haunted Life, and Sean has moved to Lowell and has been here for 3 years. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but we do work with a lot of Boston actors and directors in the greater Boston area. So we do work with local talent as much as possible. We haven't done a play by someone in the last few years, but that doesn't mean we haven't in our history. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Well, so that brings me to the actors. Is there anyone that you kind of keep your eye on from year to year? Do people stand out as, are there standout actors that are local?
So Joel Kolodner is local. I think he's in New Hampshire now, but you would know him from the Boston scene. Megan Sandberg-Sakian is our director in residence. She's a big director in Boston. We do try to hire local folks as much as possible. Boston has a great theater scene. This region has a great theater scene. We do hire from New York City as well, and Chicago and other places across the country. But in terms of people that we're keeping an eye on, last year we produced a play called Kinyum, by Vichet Chum, and Vichet is Cambodian American. He's from Texas, and he wrote this lovely play about exploring his family's story and how they escaped the genocide and came to live in Texas, and who he is as a person who was born from that family and whose family never talked about that trauma. And his whole story is that he's preparing to go to Cambodia for the first time, and he's trying to learn the language. And from that is this beautiful play that we did last year. And while we were doing that play, we really were able to meet a lot of folks in the Cambodian American community, had a lot of people come to the theater for the first time. That was a really powerful experience. But we know we can't just do that once. So Vichet is an actor and a writer, and he will actually be performing in our Christmas show, which is Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley. Has nothing to do with his Cambodian American story, but he's a wonderful actor, and we cast him in the show. So there's a nice way to keep showcasing actors that we love and who have really made a connection to the community.
And now what is that play about?
So Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley, takes place after Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So we're combining two favorite things. We're combining Austen and Christmas in this play. Also written by Lauren Gunderson and her collaborator, Margot Melkin.
She's prolific.
She is prolific, and she really said, you know what, American theater needs a new Christmas play. We'll combine it with Austen, and it'll be a hit. And it has been a hit. There's been 1 or 2 other theaters that have done it. It has just sold tons of tickets. So the whole family comes home to Pemberley for Christmas, and there's all sorts of hijinks and engagements and wrong engagements, and it's just classic Jane Austen.
I will have to see that one.
We're really excited about that. We're one of only a few theaters have done it, so we're really excited to do that. And then what other plays haven't we talked about?
Well, you must have some coming up in the spring, right?
So, right, in the spring we also have Cry It Out is our last show of the season, and that's a story of 2 new moms on Long Island who come from very different backgrounds. They have brand new babies, and they keep meeting in the back of their yard for coffee while their babies are napping, and they talk about all the things that new mothers talk about. And really, anyone who's been a new mom has seen sort of the intense friendships you develop with other new moms at this time while you're struggling with, will I go back to work? Do I have to go back to work?
I don't want to go back to work.
All of those questions. At the same time, there's another couple where the dad wants to stay home. He's quite wealthy, and he's a real character in this piece. And it's a lovely story. It'll make you cry a little bit. It'll make you laugh a lot. But it also examines the dynamics at play if you don't want to go back to work, but you have to, and the sacrifices we make in order to try and stay home, and all of those dynamics at play that you hear families talking about all the time, you know, where we in a place where we don't have a lot of paid childcare, paid leave.
And then, so what do you have going on into the spring?
So I actually just covered the whole spring just there.
That is it. Okay.
So right now we have
That
native
didn't seem
gardens.
like 7.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna fill in the gap. So right now we have Native Gardens, and then we're doing this hilarious musical. It's 2 people playing 13 characters and playing piano. So this was a real hit a few years ago in New York City off Broadway, and we're just so excited to have one of the co-collaborators who performed it originally be in our production, and that's called Murder for Two. So that, you know, anyone who loves a good musical, anyone who loves a good whodunit, is anyone who loves it when, you know, one person plays 7 characters. You're gonna love that. That's the next show in our season. Then we go into our Christmas show.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go into Slow Food, this comedy about this couple that's been married for a long time.
Right.
Then we have The Heath, which is that new Lauren Gunderson piece about herself and her grandfather. Then we have The Haunted Life, the Kerouac piece. And then we have Cry It Out. I think I got them all. Yeah.
That does sound like 7.
So it's a real mix of offerings, comedies, a musical, you know, something in period costumes at the Christmas time with some Jane Austen, and a piece that is more modern and a little bit more experimental with Lauren's new show, The Heath.
So how do you make these decisions as to what's going to go on and what's, you know, and what's not?
Right.
Do you get together with, is there an advisory board?
We do get together. So theater is unique in that there are 2 people who run the theater. So Sean Daniels, the artistic director, and myself as the executive director are co-collaborators. It's unlike most business models. So we are co-equal leaders of the organization. We have to make all our decisions together. And then underneath us, I have all the business side. So I have all the finance, marketing, and development. And he has the whole artistic and production side.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean is unique in that he's very open about his artistic process. You can come into rehearsal, you can come see a run through.
Can we?
You can.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
He's very open about his artistic process. In fact, we have this group called the Cohort Club. And we actually have a few folks from Westford who participate in that. And the Cohort Club allows folks to come and see rehearsals, come get all the reports, and really understand how a play is put together. On a related note, we also have this season planning cabinet. So Sean invites community members, donors, trustees, and staff to read all the plays he's considering. So we've read about 10 plays so far, and we get together about once a month and discuss those plays. The ultimate decision is up to Sean. So he will pick a season, and then we all go back and sharpen our pencils and put together a budget. And then we look at the budget and we say, does this budget work for these shows? And sometimes we have to move things around. So it may be that we have too many large cast shows and it's too expensive. We might change something around and have a 1 or 2 person show, which is less expensive. It really depends on all the factors that go into the production costs and how many tickets we think will sell. So we know that some shows are going to sell better than others. We put all those numbers together, and usually there's several revisions after that. The first budget I did for this organization, it took us 14 revisions to finish. So it is a real process.
What was that process like? Did you did you just keep going back to the drawing board, or?
Well, there's some fixed.
I mean, 14
costs.
revisions. Is that you behind the scenes?
We have senior staff team. So we have somebody that leads marketing, somebody that leads development. We have a production leader, a producer, myself and Sean, and a finance director. And so we're each responsible for a piece of the budget. And some things we can't change. You know, we know what our rent is going to be. We know how much we pay, you know, monthly for the offices that we own. All of those things are set. But the variables come into with the production costs, and then if we think a season is going to sell a certain amount of subscriptions, is it going to sell a certain amount of single tickets? Are we going to try and add any staff? You know, we're a very lean, small organization. So every year we're kind of assessing and saying, is this the year that we could add that position that we really need, or do we have to wait? So it's a lot of back and forth, looking at the numbers, looking at, you know, who's going to donate, what are they going to donate? How much is it going to be worth? And there's a bunch of factors that we don't control. So we enter into union agreements with the actor union. We are what's called a LORT theater. That's the League of Regional Theaters. That's our bargaining collective that negotiates with the unions for actors and designers and production.
Oh, who would have thought it would be so complicated?
It's much more complicated than people expect. Mm-hmm. So the union rates are set. We need to pay our designers a fee that is somewhat comparable to other theaters so that they'll work with us. So some of that stuff is already laid out. And then we get into how much is it going to cost to build the set? Are the costumes more expensive because they're, specialty items? They're going to need to be handcrafted. Are they off the rack? And there's a lot of variables. And so
my goodness,
all the parts of the organization come together and we take a first look at the budget and then do lots of revisions. And sometimes we change the season. We say, you know what, we're not going to take a risk on that show. We're going to put this show in because we think it'll make more money and it's less expensive.
How big a staff do you have there?
We have about 21 who are either full-time, part-time, or but with us for the whole season, and a few people who are with us just for the season. We do hire overhire, which is like folks who would help load in a set. We do hire some people on a temporary basis for certain jobs. And then we hire all of our actors and directors and designers. So we have 10 apartments. And during the season, they're usually full and we're overflowing into a nearby hotel.
So you put people up?
Right, because most of our actors, even if they're coming from Boston, a lot of times we need to house them. And most of our actors are coming from New York or California or Chicago.
What a big operation.
I know, it's much bigger than people expect, even for a one-person show.
Yeah.
You still sometimes need all those designers and their assistants to put it together.
So how many seats are in the theater?
We have 270 seats.
And what's, for theater goers, what's the average price of a theater? What's the range of ticket price, I mean?
Yeah, we have a range of ticket price depending on whether you're coming on a Saturday night or a Wednesday matinee. The ticket prices change. We're like the airline industry in that we do dynamic pricing. We're not making the seats smaller, though. The seats are what they are. The average ticket price is about $38, but I do want to mention that for every show this year, as part of our 40th anniversary season, we have 2 for $40. So you can get 2 tickets for $40 at any show.
It's very reasonable. I mean, any play in Boston is much more. So
yeah, and
probably twice as much.
Cast members, our designers, they work in Boston, so it's not like you're getting a different quality.
No, you're not.
You're just going to pay less for the
true.
ticket,
yeah,
and you're going to pay less for parking.
Yes,
is $5.
And you don't have to drive into Boston.
Right.
So before we close, can you dish a little bit about behind the scenes, when a play is going on, and what's the drama behind the drama?
Well, I will say this, for the show that we're working on right now, Native Gardens, we have a real oak tree on stage that was that some folks helped us get, but after we put it on stage, we realized that it needed branches. So this email went out to the entire staff saying, hey, do you have any oak trees that we could cut branches off of? And there may have been some people out cutting oak branches to make this happen. So that was like one of those funny things.
Did you glue them on?
Yeah.
You did?
We glued them on, and the leaves, like these, are all treated with a flame retardant because you can't put that much stuff on stage without treating it with a flame retardant. So they'll last for 4 weeks, we hope.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I just pictured our tech staff out, cutting branches, which is exactly what they were doing. They were out cutting branches off of trees in their yard, in their friends' yards, trying to give the tree a few more branches.
I just wonder what kind of epoxy you used to make a tree branch stand on a trunk.
I don't know the answer to that, but there's probably quite a few screws and epoxy to put those branches on.
Well, that's a great dish. Thank you for sharing that. Before we close, you probably have already said it, but what would you want Westford residents to know most about MRT?
Well, it's right there, and I know a lot of you are going to Boston. We talk about that, and I know a lot of you are supporting theater right in our schools because we have a great theater program, but we need you to just drive that 17 minutes and only pay $5 for parking. We really want to be the Merrimack Valley's regional theater. We want to get more people from Westford and all the surrounding communities to come in, and this is the perfect time, 2 for $40.
I was just going to say that. You just took the words right out of my mouth. So thank you so much, Bonnie, for
thank
coming
you.
in and talking with us and sharing the behind-the-scenes information about MRT.
Well, you can find me at all sorts of sporting events. My kids love flag football and lacrosse, and I'll be there with brochures if you need them.
I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to recognize you now on the soccer fields.
Great.
So thank you. For WestfordCAT News, this is Joyce Polino Crane. See you around town and hope to see you at MRT.